When I was a young lad growing up, there were two main ways to discover a new video game. One was through gaming magazines. If you bought a magazine, they would have a bunch of articles about different games and reviews for some games. But quite often, they would come with a demo disc. And on these discs, there would be 5, 10, maybe 15 demos of games that you could play. And this was a great way to discover new games and get interested in games that you might not have heard about otherwise. I have very fond memories of playing these demo discs, and that's how I first got introduced to games like Tekken and Spyro the Dragon, Soul Calibur, a lot of games that I would have otherwise never played or never thought about playing and never discovered. Now these demos, if it was something like a fighting game, it would only give you about 2 characters to play with in one game mode, maybe just a versus. But if it was a story-based game, you'd have about 30 minutes worth of the game to play, like the story. And there's nothing really like that anymore, which is kind of a shame. I know on the PlayStation subscription service, if you subscribe to the highest paid tier, you have access to game trials, which does allow you to play a game for a few hours to see if you want to buy it. But to have access to those trials, you need to be paying 20 something Australian dollars a month. But the demo discs were cheap. I mean, you buy a gaming magazine for like $3 or $4 that would come with these demos, and then you would find some demos that you liked, and you'd remember the name of those games, and then you'd look out for them. In gaming stores, you might ask for one for your birthday or for Christmas. And video rental stores were the second method of discovering video games. Along with renting movies, you could rent games, and I used to love doing that. You could rent them, if they were brand new, you could only get them for one night at a time. If they'd been out for a few months, you could get them for 3 nights, but if they were out for about a year or more, you could rent them for a week. And a lot of games back then could easily be finished within a week, so I discovered so many games by, being on school holidays and just gaming. That was my number one hobby for me and my brothers growing up. So we got through so many classic games back then. We'd also get through some crap games as well. There was no information for me back then to know which games were good and which games were bad. I was just picking them based on what looked cool, on the back of it, the blurb and the pictures and the general vibe of the game. So I definitely rented some duds, but I also discovered games that I would never have played otherwise. Games that were not reviewed very well, but are really special to me that I really love. And I think about how I operate and view things now. I don't play games generally if they don't get good reviews. So I always think, am I missing out on some hidden gems by doing that? It's hard to find the time as an adult to play bad games. If you're going to play a game and devote that period of your free time to gaming, you want it to be good. Whereas being a kid, you'd have a lot more time just to muck around, and if you rented a bad game, it was whatever. You'd probably still finish it, or at least play through a lot of it, because you wanted to get your money's worth. I was spending $4, $5 on a game. I was gonna play it. I was gonna get some hours into it. Going to video stores was great, and I discovered a lot of great games by doing that, and this was one of them. Tombi, or Tomba, as it was called, I think in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm not sure why they're different titles, but here it is. And this was a very, underground game, very niche game. It was developed by Whoopee Camp, and Whoopee Camp was headed up by a Japanese guy. I don't know his name, I need to look it up, but he has an amazing resume. He worked on Mega Man and Resident Evil, and I think he worked at Capcom for a bunch of years before he split off and created Whoopee Camp, which was his own development studio. Sadly, they only ever made 2 games, Tombi and Tombi 2, which is even rarer than this one. I have a physical copy of Tombi, which is quite rare. I think this is worth a few $100s now. It's in pretty good condition. If we open it up, we see this sort of advertisement for the DualShock controller, which was a new thing back then, the analog sticks and the vibration. We have the game manual. We have the disc. It's a nice looking disc. Tombi was a really colorful game. Loved its pinks and yellows. And, of course, the game manual. Games used to come with physical manuals. Look at this thing. It's a tome. It's that long because it's in different languages, but I was reading through this before, and it's really cool. It has like a plot summary and a bit more detail that I had never seen before about the story, and a bit of a backstory to some of the characters. It's also got a list of all the enemies you'll find in the game and the best strategies to defeat them. I think I missed out on this when I played this game. I probably should have read the manual, to be honest, but yeah, it's really cool. And another funny relic from the past is if you go to the back of the manual, there's a bunch of phone numbers for game help. And I remember calling these numbers back then when you were stuck on a certain section of a game. There was no quick information for you to be able to get. You couldn't just pull out your phone and Google how to get past this section. If you were stuck, you would call a phone number, and it was like a call center. Someone on the other end would pick up, ask you what game you were playing, whereabouts were you, where you were stuck, and they would try and help you. These guys must have just been the ultimate game geniuses or game nerds, and they'd help you through it. And I remember calling this number and asking for help for games like Spyro the Dragon and Tombi and other ones. So yeah, little blast from the past there. Tombi was unique because it had a non-linear game structure, which is quite common now. Like in games like Elden Ring, you get quests and the game doesn't tell you how to actually accomplish them. You just have to explore the world and figure it out for yourself. Tombi was like that. You would get quests and you would gather items throughout playing the game, and you had to figure out which items related to which quests. And it was kind of hard. There were some really abstract solutions to some of the quests, but it created a great gaming experience, especially playing with my brothers, where we'd be stuck on a certain section and then one of us would figure out, oh, you need to use the banana, try the banana, put the banana in the monkey. That didn't sound right, but there is actually a quest where you have to give a monkey a banana. And that monkey's name is Charles, funnily enough. I have really fond memories of playing this game, and I remember playing the demo of Tombi years and years ago, and it would get up to this certain point in the story, and then it would say, to get past this point, you need to purchase the full game. So for years and years, we only knew the game up to that point because we didn't own it, and it wasn't available for rent at my local video store, I think because it was quite a rare game. We either couldn't find it at, EB Games or GameStop or whatever, or we just couldn't afford it. It took me about 10 years, and then I finally, saved up a bit of money in high school, and I bought the game off eBay, so we actually got the chance to play it for the first time fully about 10 years after playing the demo, and it was such an awesome experience to actually get past that sort of brick wall in the demo. Finally got to discover the rest of the game, and it was just magical. The game had quite a mystical quality to it. It wasn't huge on the story, but there would be these really cool cutscenes with these great vibes. Like I remember playing the demo, and there's this part of the game where you climb up this big forest kind of structure, and you get to the very top, and there's a lookout with binoculars, and you look through the binoculars, and this cutscene activates. Through the binoculars, you see this island that looks like a pig. It's like a rock formation that looks like a evil pig's face, and the music's kind of creepy, and it just creates this vibe of like, oh, whoa, what's going on there? And it really added to the mystique for us when we were playing it, because it was just a demo. We had no way to actually complete the game, so we would just be thinking, wow, like, what is that island? Can we get there? What's on that island? I just missed that time when we didn't have all the answers and access to spoilers. You just have to figure stuff out for yourself, and you just think a lot more about the game when you weren't playing it. You kind of, especially playing demos of games, you'd think, wow, where's this story going to go? Where's this game going to go? The game has really cool art style. It's very colorful. It's 2D. It's fun. It's pretty easy to play. And it has, even though it's a bit light on the story, it has really cool atmosphere, music, and a bit of lore as well. There's these like really ancient men that you run into that range from 100 years old all the way to 1,000,000 years old, and you kind of discover them gradually throughout the game. And each time you run into one, they divulge a bit more information about the history of the world and the evil pigs that you have to defeat in the game. These like wizard pigs that have come to Tombi's land and corrupted it. That's the whole purpose of the game. You have to defeat these 7 pigs. There's some difficult platforming sections, like this mountain that there's wind that blows, so you have to jump and adjust for the wind. It's quite awful. And it's also difficult to figure out some of the quests because they're very obscure. There's this section early on in the game where if you throw an enemy into this wall, it breaks and it looks like there's some sort of like elevator door there. But you don't actually find out what that is for hours and hours later, which was quite a unique thing for a game, in the 90s to have that sort of quest structure. So you discover this door very early on in the game, and it's only towards the end of the game that you actually get to go down there, and it's this amazing area called the Underground Forest, and that's where the 1,000,000-year-old man is, and the music is very mystical, and it's just an awesome moment. Now, there is a sequel to this game. It's even rarer and harder to find than this one. I don't think there's a copy of it online for less than like $150. I would love to see Tombi come to the PlayStation Store so more people can experience it. I have read that they're working on a remake of Tombi. I haven't heard any updates for a while. I really hope it's true because that would be really, really cool for old fans of the game and also people to discover it for the first time. It's a very unique PS1 hidden gem, in my opinion. One of my favorite games of all time. It's a relic and it takes me back to a better time for gaming and some great memories.